Alright, today's game is about
Extreme Americanization.
Revelations Persona, or Megami Ibunroku Persona, or just Persona 1, is a JRPG released in 1996 by a Japanese company, Atlus. Nearing its 30th birthday and also being the first entry to the fanatically preached series, that is Persona, it is interestingly almost forgotten. The same usually applies to Persona 2 duology, that is Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment, and it's common to say that Persona 3 was the first real one. In a sense, that is kind of true, because of the remarkable change in basic form of gameplay between Persona 2 and 3. Persona 3 is very much the first installment to that Persona series that we know nowadays. Obviously, this video was always meant to be, because during the making of this video, Atlus unleashed the reveal trailer for the next installment in the series, Persona 6. Therefore, it's an excellent time to make a return to the origins of the series. The Persona series was originally a spin-off from the Megami Tensei series, commonly shortened as Megaten. Megami Tensei has always been considered a rather hardcore JRPG series from the very first release, Digital Devil's Story, Megami Tensei, released in 1987. There's a ridiculously large amount of Megaten games released of various styles, from commonly known gems to alarmingly obscure ones, and most likely the most known Megaten games are the Shin Megami Tensei games. The series usually dabbles in very different settings compared to Persona, such as blending future digital age cyberpunk with demon summoning and post-apocalyptic themes. The central focus of the story is usually how you decide to shape the world. Your morals are questioned, whether you subject yourself to the doctrine of God or get allured by the morning star, or maybe you decide to flip the bird to all sides and serve only yourself. The biggest thing that the series came up with is the demon negotiation system, which allowed the player to recruit demons to their own ranks by striking a deal with them. This very system was obviously found great because the behemoth of games known as Pokemon took influences from it. With its own family-friendly pocket monsters, Pokemon became one of the largest IPs known to mankind. Friendship is indeed magic. On the surface, the Persona series is usually tied to much more mundane and common settings. However, it does blend in psychological topics of human consciousness and unconscious, in particular Jungian psychology, so there is a lot of depth indeed. Without deconstructing the concept of analytical psychology, in which I am no expert at all, and also to put it super simple, it's about how humans project themselves outside and how they manifest inside in many other forms. Luckily, you do not necessarily need to understand psychological concepts to enjoy Persona. You can just enjoy building your social links, attend school activities, and then steal the hearts of the bad guys. So what's with the games about school anyways? Isn't it already enough that we spend roughly 12 to 20 years of our lives in educational institutions, and then we decide to spend our leisure time with video games about school? Really? Really? All jokes aside, Atlus wanted the gamers to have a relatable setting, and what's more universally relatable than school? Obviously, the basic logic is to apply to broader audiences, and to be honest, Persona 1 isn't even the first Atlus game to have an educational institute as a key location. That would be Shin Megami Tensei F, which also introduced a sort of a prototype of the Persona system called the Guardian system. In fact, the Persona series owes a lot to Megami Tensei. For example, the vast majority of the characters, aka demons, stem from Megaten. A fun fact is that vanilla Persona 4 was still titled as a Shin Megami Tensei game. Most likely it was a marketing trick, and it was dropped when Persona 4 Golden was released, meaning that Persona was established enough in the Western market to stand on its own legs. Regarding Persona 1, Atlus had two goals. One, to spread their name on the PlayStation. They hadn't yet released anything on the system, so now the time was right. And two, to grow the Megami Tensei series by appealing to a bit more casual audiences. Atlus really pumped a lot of resources to this game, and there even were commercials that the team was very happy with. A singular game disc filled to the brim with data, and it's a wonder that this isn't a 2-disc game. The end result was Megami Ibunroku Persona, which was localized to the US under the name of Revelations Persona. As far as I know, it's also the first Megaten JRPG released outside Japan. The original Japanese title roughly translates to a side story of some sort, and it's ridiculously hard to market a side story to a completely new audience that is unaware of the series in the first place, hence the change of the name in the US. In addition, Revelations Persona was supposed to jumpstart a new Revelations series to the US markets. It did have a second game added to the series known as Revelations the Demon Slayer. Ultimately, the series was dropped entirely. Today's game, Revelations Persona, is a game surrounded by infamy. The key reason behind the infamy lies in the extreme Americanization that the original game was subjected to. Almost every single thing hinting towards Japan is gone and is replaced by Western influences. Character looks and names were changed, locations were renamed, yen became a dollar, crucial content was altered, and demons' names were changed so that the US audience would connect with them better. The most commonly known alteration is most likely the character Masao Inaba, who had been completely transformed to Mark. There were also plenty of changes to the original script of the game, altering the very story as well. In addition, all of this was done half-assed, resulting in a horrible translation with plenty of awkward moments and errors. To be fair, the whole game was translated by a really small team in a ridiculously small period of time, and to add another insult to the injury, the team clearly did not play the game at all, therefore lacking critical context in things happening during the game. Imagine translating a huge JRPG with a team of 6 in a tight time frame with no context whatsoever. We're gonna make a return to this topic during the last part of the video, because all of this resulted in another major change to the US release. This game was eventually remade to the PSP, which was a very welcome product for the Western world, because in this version, the American alterations are gone, returning the original content, and the translation work has gone through major improvements. There are also plenty of quality of life improvements and a remade soundtrack in the spirit of modern Persona, which in particular has split the opinions of the fanbase, vastly altering the original atmosphere. The PSP version was the only way for Europeans to enjoy the first Persona until PlayStation Classic was released with a surprise game inside, Revelations Persona. Personally, this particular version has been on my bucket list for a long time, and I've never played Persona 1 in any form. Revelations is an abnormal entity in the Persona universe, oozing very different 90s dungeon crawling energy, and that very energy is most likely the biggest reason why I'm playing this version. I'm no stranger to Persona games, and they are awesome in their own rights and worthy of their critical acclaim, but first and foremost, I'm a big fan of Shin Megami Tensei. Strange Journey and Nocturne might be my favorite JRPGs of all time, and in addition to them, I've beaten a couple of other Megaten games as well, so it's a special series to me. Before moving on to the game itself, I still want to emphasize that we are completely focusing on Revelations Persona, meaning that we'll tackle it as an individual entity, so all the analysis and critique is towards Revelations Persona, and it doesn't necessarily target Megami Ibunroku Persona or the PSP remake. All these versions are different, and we'll talk about the differences during the video. With that being said, don't rip off your pants when I'm using the absurd naming conventions exclusive to Revelations Persona. It's gonna be a long one due to the amount of different gameplay features, so let's get into it. Greetings, dear viewer, I am Hypo. Grab a snack and relax, for in this video we are gonna take a look at Revelations Persona for the PS1. Uncle Sam wants us enlisted on behalf of freedom and liberty, so it's up to us to find out. So, how was it? The game begins at St. Hermelin High School, where a group of students are playing a game called Persona, which is apparently a paranormal summoning game comparable to Ouija or the Japanese version Kokkuri-san, but without any equipment. The game introduces us to the main characters: Mark, a troublemaker; Brad, a self-centered and arrogant fellow; Alana, a bimbo thanks to the manual; Ellen, a smart and beautiful girl; Nate, a snob rich guy; and Yuki, the most responsible and trustworthy of all. It doesn't take long to witness a typo in the translation, as Brad's opening phrase has a good old your error. It reminds me of elementary school. Apparently the group has played Persona before, but with less results than they've wanted. However, this time they see a ghostly little girl crying for help, and not long after, 4 students, us included, are struck with a lightning of some sort, rendering us unconscious and triggering a cutscene. We meet a masked figure dressed in white introducing himself as Philemon, who states that he is a being living in between consciousness and unconsciousness. He asks our name, and we are to provide. The game allows us to name ourselves how we want. This common RPG feature has always provided more feeling of immersion, allowing us to become something apart from the normal mundane world, if we wanted so. Now that we're living in the American dream, it's fitting that we name ourselves appropriately. As a brain-fogged 21st century citizen, I had to travel to the digital mountains to ask advice from the modern, omnipresent oracle, ChatGPT.
Beep boop.
The oracle shared its wisdom with me, and James was the most common American male name, which would be the most logical choice here. I thanked the oracle, but a rebellious spirit as I am, I felt an urge to resist the machine god. I disregarded its advice and named myself Steve, the true American high school hero. Philemon congratulates us remembering our identity and explains we hold more versions of ourselves inside us, benevolent and malevolent masks, and it's not common for people to discern who they really are. Philemon bestows us his power, a persona, leaving plenty of questions unanswered. The group of 4 wakes up at the school infirmary, and apparently all 4 have had the same dream about this Philemon figure, talking about multiple versions of ourselves. Our teacher, Mrs. Smith, a true American, tells us to have ourselves checked out in the town hospital. She also recommends us to visit Mary on the same trip, who is a friend of ours that has been hospitalized for a whole year. We gain control of our character in an isometric world. It's D-pad for movement and X button for actions. By moving near another character, we can ask directions to the hospital. Luckily, the characters in the isometric world need only to be talked once to see all the dialogue. Mark tells us that the hospital is far away from the school, in the northeast corner of the town. He talks about a map, so apparently there's a map system in the game. The school nurse also recommends us that we take a look at the special plant in the corner of the room, teaching us how to save the game. These purple leaf trees are Augustus trees, which are the only way to save the game, and it's definitely a great thing that we are taught this. A weird thing is that there's also a game end option. Choosing it asks if you want to end your game, and in practice it has zero function. Maybe it was a sure way to prevent corrupting your save data when turning off the console. Walking out the infirmary leads to the school corridors or to the dungeon, as the game implies. So now it makes sense why our youth in the school felt like a prison. This is the dungeon mode, a 3D map in which you're going to spend most of the time playing the game. It's very much reminiscent of previous Megaten games, displaying the dungeon map up right and the moon phase in the left. We'll talk about the moon phases later. The school is a very big place to explore, and there's plenty of NPCs to chat with if you're feeling like it. Coincidentally, there is a historical monument outside called the Filament Stone that was, according to a legend, dropped down below by an angel called Philemon. An odd coincidence indeed. Before leaving the school, the game develops its character relationships further by introducing some tension between Mark and Nate. The level of dialogue doesn't promise much, and we are up for a real ride of awkwardness. We also meet Alfred, a butler of Nate's family. He cares a lot about Nate, but Nate is very embarrassed by all of this, and he gets ridiculed by Mark, developing more tension between the two. Alfred offers us a ride with a limo, but Nate insists on walking. In my opinion, we should have taken the limo ride because the town, Lunarvale, is massive in size. Lunarvale is an unnecessarily large town filled with grey buildings of all sizes which cannot be entered. There's roughly 16 points of interest spread in the vast town that can be interacted with, varying from special locations to shops and save points. Luckily, there is indeed a map system that can be accessed by pressing the R2 button, so you don't necessarily have to use the manual or advice from the NPCs for navigation. The town is surprisingly detailed, there's even cars around and ongoing traffic. Too bad that there is not too much to interact with. You're very free to explore Lunarvale as you see fit, within the boundaries of the world. The town is your oyster. After reaching the hospital, the party decides to visit Mary first. Mark somehow knows Mary's room number, implying that he has visited her recently. He's a bit embarrassed when confronted about it. In room 302, we meet Mary, who has indeed been hospitalized for a whole year due to minor mental delusions. I wonder how many years it would be if she had major delusions. All jokes aside, Mary is happy that everyone came to see her, thanking Mark especially, confirming our previous suspicions. There is not much told about Mary, but she is apparently very fond of her father. She dislikes her mother due to her being completely absorbed by her work in an energy company called SEBEC. Mary doesn't really remember much of outside life before being hospitalized. A whole year in a hospital is a long time. Not long after, Mary experiences a seizure of some sort, forcing everyone to call a doctor. While waiting outside, a sudden earthquake occurs and something odd happens as the room Mary was in disappears and the hospital is filled with screams of agony. Apparently zombies have awoken in the hospital morgue, attacking everyone. An old man who is revealed to be Alfred tries to protect everyone and he himself gets hurt badly. Nate is angered by this and we're taken to a scripted battle sequence where the group of 4 awakens their personas. Oh man, imagine screwing up the iconic I am thou, thou art I phrase. Considering the series, it's a bit abnormal that all 4 awaken their personas at the same time, even though Nate is the only one that is emotionally distressed, as usually the awakening happens during an emotional episode. I guess it's just fitting that everyone can fend off for themselves. After awakening our personas, we level up. Every time you level up, you get to spend 3 points towards 5 attributes: strength, vitality, technique, agility, or luck. The manual explains it well what increasing each of the attributes improves. As useful as the manual is, it's unfortunately filled with some inconsistencies and typos, and we'll point out more of those faults during the video. The yellow bar represents your character's base stats, red is your persona added, and later on, the blue one represents bonuses from equipment. I'm going to be focusing mostly on technique and agility, because I want to be the first one moving in the battle while being accurate. Your companions also level up, but you cannot decide their stat allocations, so they develop on their own. All the companions are automatically developed into a specific style of gameplay. For example, Mark will build himself to be a tanky frontliner. After the battle, Alfred succumbs to his wounds while having a final moment with Nate, encouraging him to become something great. It is a surprisingly touching moment, and Nate vows to honor his promise to Alfred. The aftermath leads to a formation screen, which is a tactical aspect in the game, allowing you to decide how your party is displayed in the battlefield. To be honest, at first it's a pretty confusing feature, and the manual tells us a lot of nothing. Therefore, it would be wise to go just with the default one for now. We'll talk about the formations later. After locking in with the default formation, we are allowed to equip ourselves with some of the equipment the zombies dropped us. We'll equip the weapons to Steve and Nate because Mark and Yuki are already fit with weapons. Where the hell has Mark found a dual axe? Next, we are placed in the 3D mode. All the rooms have been rearranged, so we have to do some dungeon delving. It's the first dungeon of the game, and naturally that means battling against the monsters, or demons as they are in this game. Let's go through the basic battle systems. The battle screen is an isometric battlefield offering plenty of detail regarding combatants on both sides of the field. That level of detail was something that Atlus focused on greatly, and to be honest, battling looks and sounds great. Before Persona 1, the battles were mostly static 2D screens with low amounts of effects and sound. First of all, your options are to fight, contact the demons, try to escape, change your formation, analyze the enemy, or initiate the auto combat. The bottom side of the screen depicts your party status and the current moon phase. When meeting a demon for the first time, the analysis section doesn't provide you any information, and the only way to gain info is to defeat that particular demon or have a successful conversation with it. Speaking of contacting the demons, we are not going to cover it just yet, so let's just fight now. Choosing fight opens up the battle options, from which you can attack with your melee weapon, or a gun, yeah, that's guns for high schoolers, and you can also use items or just defend. In addition, you can use your persona skills, which we can think of as magic and abilities. You can also change your persona, which takes a turn. The basic flow of combat works like this. First, you decide whether you want to fight, contact, or escape the battle. Second, you decide how each of your character does battle, determining their targets, and their location in the formation plays a huge role how they are able to attack. Some weapons and spells are able to target multiple enemies or friendlies, so keep your eyes open when confirming targets. And third, you confirm all the actions and watch the battle sequence play. During the first battles, you'll most likely find out that there are many situations where some party members are forced to defend because of their position in the battlefield. Here's Mark and Yuki unable to do anything, so they have to default to defending. Battling overall is a bit slow. Animations, as stylish as they are, take quite a long time to finish, and when there's a lot of enemies on the field, or even a boss, battles can become very lengthy. When the battle ends, the experience is awarded depending how individual characters performed, which will become problematic, I can guarantee. The result window shows two types of experience points, which are character experience and persona experience. They both are individual systems in which character level allows you to level up your stats further, and persona level, or P level in short, determines the level of persona that the character is able to use. In addition, there is a third hidden experience system, which we are going to talk about later, when our characters develop a bit further. The result screen also shows all the money and occasional items you are awarded, and that pretty much sums up the basics of combat. The hospital is a fair tutorial dungeon teaching a lot of the basics. Demons are running amok, and we are to find our way out of these chaotic corridors. The game favors patient dungeoneering, as there are multiple unique rooms spread here and there. Here is an Augustus tree, teaching us that there's usually at least one of these in the dungeon. Then there's occasional loot rooms, which usually have a container or few filled with some loot. They usually award you items or even upgrades in equipment, which can be very powerful in that part of the game where you're at. Some rooms also have NPCs to talk with, and usually they just develop the situation further, offering their thoughts. This dungeon has also a hidden healer for a keen explorer, which can be a real lifesaver in a pinch. However, these free of charge healers are very rare in this game. Upon reaching the lobby, we're given an important choice. There is a nurse trapped under a vending machine, and it's up to us to decide whether we help her or not. In these situations, your party members usually are very vocal about what you should do, offering their opinions for you to weigh on. Yuki asks us to help the nurse, meanwhile Nate thinks that the nurse will not make it, and we should just save ourselves while we still can. Their opinions greatly mirror their personalities, which allows the player to get familiar with the characters and perhaps even bond with them. The nurse agrees with Nate, but it's up to us whether we help her or not. Remember this moment before we decide to help the nurse. Before we're able to help the nurse, the zombies catch us and we are to defend ourselves. Suddenly, Ellen appears, apparently aware of the zombies. She states that she is able to fend for herself, and she awakens her persona as well, which means level ups for everyone! Ellen recognizes her persona and gets lost in thought, thinking of herself as a chosen one of some sort. So apparently her beauty and knowledge has some hidden quirks after all. After snapping out of it, she explains she had the same dream about Philemon as we did. She joins the party while advising us to return to the school, which is a safe place from demons. Before returning to school, Ellen thinks we should help Mary's mom, who is hurt and located in the town shrine. I've no clue how she knows this, but I guess she went there before or something. Upon exiting the hospital, we realize that the gigantic Lunarvale is now filled with random encounters, which will most likely make you insane at some point, because the encounter rates are really high. The demon variety has also increased, so let's try to contact the demons now. Pressing the contact option allows you to negotiate with the demons. Succeeding in the fine art of negotiation can award you items, experience, money, or even a spell card, allowing you to have new personas for your party members, so it is a crucial thing to do. The demon negotiation system, as I mentioned in the beginning, is a quintessential Megami Tensei feature, and it's present here in Persona 1. In this game, every single party member has 4 conversation options, and you need to find out the correct ones in conjunction with the demon's personality in order to make them act how you want. How the dialogue is going is determined by the upper left corner of the screen. Depending on your choices, the demon experiences one of the 4 emotions that are joy, anger, fear, or interest. Maxing out at least one of them ends the conversation, and the result depends on the maxed emotion. Maxing joy makes the demon skip a turn, leave the battle, or even give you random items. Maxing anger makes the demons agitated, and they will most likely attack you instantly, forcing you to skip a turn, making this the worst one. In addition, angering the demons locks the negotiation option for a couple of turns for that specific demon. Maxing fear usually leads demons to leave the battle, but it can also inflict status conditions, which this game has way too many. However, the most sought emotion to max is interest, because it allows you to ask the demon for specific things, and this is the only way for you to get those important spell cards. It's also possible to max out more than one emotion with combined effects. The most beneficial combination is to max out interest and joy, which allows you to get a spell card and an item as an extra. Blending in fear or anger causes the demons to act more randomly, making it more unlikely that you're getting the result you want. You can strike a conversation with the majority of the enemies, and the only ones you cannot talk with are bosses and human enemies. An important balancing factor with this system is that you cannot get a spell card from a demon that's level is higher than your party's average level, always rounded down, so that means you're going to be manually calculating your party's average level quite often. Curse you, basic mathematics, invading my enjoyment in video games. In practice, this system is a bit rough on the edges. The personalities are rather vague, and it's hard to discern the correct options to match the demon's personality, so therefore it feels like a guessing game. The dialogue itself is often a bunch of small talk after another, which is something that you don't really need to pay too much attention to. There's even some amusing ones as well. The most meaningful interactions are the ones when a demon asks something from you, which is usually items, money, or even health points. Perhaps the most known dialogue option is Mark's dance, which sometimes prompts the option "Mark danced crazy," which is obviously an error. However, its hilariousness was met well within fans, and this particular piece of dialogue was eventually left as it is in the PSP remake. Rarely, a demon might be the one opening the dialogue at the start of the battle. This usually makes the demon a bit easier to strike a deal with. In order to nail the correct choices, I recommend 2 options. One is to manually find out yourself which option works with which personalities, and then document them yourself on a notepad. 2 is to use an online guide based on the PSP version, listing all the correct options. At some point during my playthrough, I defaulted to a guide, because there are just so many different personalities that you could write a book out of them. If you're using an online guide, please remember that the vast majority of demons have an altered name in this version, so you have to use another guide as well to connect the actual intended names to the Americanized ones. If you're familiar with the series, I'm sure you'll get very confused by the names from the get-go, because you might actually recognize some of the familiar faces having an odd name here. There is also a touch of RNG involved, so sometimes you're angering the demons no matter what, and there's really nothing you can do. The moon phase allegedly plays a role in this, but I didn't find a particular phase which alters the results. Usually it's full moon which makes the majority of demons unable to talk reasonably. However, there are some demons that are only able to talk during the full moon, but in Persona 1, none of these seem to apply. In the end, it's up to you how you're tackling the negotiations, but I wanted to be transparent about using a guide during my playthrough. Upon obtaining a spell card, it cannot be used by itself, and it has to be kind of like processed further, which we're going to talk about later in depth. For now, they are stored in a limited inventory of spell cards. So, some of the locations in the town have been cut off. In order to have a small break, I'm trying to save my game by the Augustus tree, which means passing the SEBEC building which Mary's mother was working in, but the area is cut off by men in black. Something's clearly going on there because the men insists on us turning back, so no saving the game for me. The shrine is conveniently located near the school, and while visiting the shrine, Philemon appears to us as a butterfly.
Welcome back, my friend. Have you mastered the use of your persona? As you have noticed, the whole world has started to shift to a world that should not be. People with strong minds can stop this insane shift.
What did he say?
Insane shift.
Oh, I thought you said something else.
From moving any further. Many doors will be open to you in the future, and you will see the deeds of very evil men. It will be up to you to decide which door is the right door. Do not forget this.
Philemon explains that there's been a major alteration in the town orchestrated by, as he stated it himself, evil men, and it's up to us to be the heroes. The shrine is filled with references to philosophical themes. Various masks in the wall touch Jungian psychology, referring to the various masks of human personality. The butterfly on the floor, or the tabards, is a key notion in Persona 1. It's a reference to the butterfly dream, which is an old philosophical parable by a Chinese philosopher, Zhuangzi. I'm not well versed in the matters of philosophy, but to put it simply, the butterfly dream is a paradox, which contemplates if we are really just living in a dream. How can we discern that the normal human life is real and not just another dream? The Matrix? Anyone? Overall, Atlus is very fond of using symbolism in their games. For example, Shin Megami Tensei's original Tetragrammaton logo has a lot of room for interpretation. For example, the phrase in Latin, quod superius macroprosopus, quod inferius microprosopus, which can be simplified as above, so below. Regarding religious symbolism in Persona 1, the Saint Hermelin school emblem has a hexagram below, the Star of David I presume, and the Christian Chi-Rho symbol on the top, with Alpha and Omega letters. The Chi-Rho symbol in particular is present in many places of the school. However, in this video we're not going to take a delve into the world of religious symbolism, so don't you worry. After some clunky dialogue, Mary's mom Nancy wakes up injured, and apparently she's been grazed by a bullet. Nancy says that she was shot by Guido's men, and everything happening in the town is orchestrated by Guido himself. So who is this Guido guy? According to the manual, Guido the Rock, Sardinia, is the vice president of Lunarvale's branch of SEBEC. Well, he sure doesn't look like Dwayne. Anyways, Nancy was involved in developing a special machine, the Deva system, which has now been activated by Guido, causing dimensional shifts, allowing demons to enter Lunarvale. The local police station is also overrun by demons, so we can't ask help from the law enforcement, so it's up for the high schoolers to save the day. Nancy also tells us of a secret entrance to the SEBEC building, which is located in an abandoned factory in another corner of the town. To stop Guido, she gives us a security guard to access the hidden entrance, and then she passes out. It's up to us to take Nancy to the school along with us so she can recover. Mark decides to go play Rambo, and he decides to go to the abandoned factory before us. Just in case, Nate tags along with Mark so that he doesn't do anything foolish. The rest of the party continue to the school alongside Nancy. Reaching the school leads to another famously bad piece of dialogue. The school is obviously closed and they've implemented a password system. Luckily, Ellen knows the password. In Revelations Persona, the password goes like this. Roses are red, zombies are blue, but my face is white, so you know I'm true. Unbelievable. Our party is disbanded for a while as Yuki and Ellen are sent to help fix a hole in the school wall so that the demons can't get in. Meanwhile, we take Nancy to the school infirmary where she explains the situation to our teacher. Miss Smith asks us to stop the other students blocking the hole in the school wall, for a while that is, because Mark and Nate might return that way. Outside we meet TJ, a shy yet diligent student that is a friend of Mary, telling us that Ellen went to help Mark and Nate, while Yuki went to find tools for blocking the hole. At this point you're given no real directions on what to do at this point, so I assume we need to find Yuki. Let's take a walk around the school then. I've no idea where Yuki is, but we meet plenty of other people, such as the principal Dr. Cotter, who's very caring of her students. She is accompanied by the vice principal Dean Harding, who has been nicknamed as Darth Harding due to his unpopularity among the students. Star Wars fans rejoice. The school library has an interesting fellow inside, who would be this pale, eccentric student, Kane, who is very interested in the demon invasion. Not everyone seems to be terrified by all of this. A student on the first floor name drops Chris, who didn't care about the demons and went outside alone. The question is he an important figure perchance? A particular location which piques my interest is this storage room next to the school gymnasium, which clearly has an interactable box on the floor, but you cannot open it because there's nothing here. There's also room for some penis jokes in the art room by examining the sculpture in front of the classroom. After exploring the school as a whole, I decide to return to that hole on the wall, and what do you know? You were supposed to examine the hole all along. We are met with a question whether we're going to SEBEC or not. There's really nothing else to do at the moment, so I guess we're going. After deciding the next course of action, Mary jumps in, causing major confusion between the students. She's suddenly acting all happy and giggly, as if nothing had ever happened. This causes major suspicion, but Mary brushes it off by proving that she is indeed Mary. She is even wearing her favorite compact, which she never leaves without, according to TJ. As Miss Smith predicted, Nate returns using the hole in the wall. He is also confused by Mary's presence and then informs us that Mark went to gather weapons from the police station, but he got caught and instead was imprisoned there, so we need to go and bust him out. Apparently they managed to grab some weapons because Nate hands us all a gun, allowing us to live the American dream to the fullest. Mary joins the party and we equip everyone with some guns. The guns are a ranged, physical option, which requires you to equip bullets alongside the gun. Luckily, the equipped bullets are infinite in numbers, so you don't have to think about restocking, however the quality of bullets can be improved, affecting the overall performance. After stepping out through the hole in the wall, Mary continues to act very weird, not genuinely knowing what is a police. In addition, she constantly keeps insisting that she wasn't hospitalized to begin with, causing even more confusion and doubt if she is capable of tagging along. Not long after, a demon attacks Mary and she awakens her persona as well. There is reason to believe that this Mary isn't the same Mary we met at the hospital before the world was altered. A nice nod towards that would be this piece of clunky dialogue: "We will not let that girl do what she wants with us." What girl? That one from the beginning or someone else? Arriving at the police station starts up the second dungeon, which is still very much the same as the hospital regarding the basic flow. That would mean sterile-looking corridors after another, with plenty of battling against hordes of demons. But hey, do remember, just say no. Mary's addition to the party is a very welcome one, because her starting persona has the Cure spell, which is a small healing spell. Before her addition, we've had to heal ourselves with items, so now things are getting comfortable. Speaking of starting personas, using a persona's abilities in battle awards them invisible experience points, and earning enough unlocks new abilities. A persona's maximum level is 8. This is the third hidden experience system in the game, which I talked about before. Not all personas are equal, because some of them learn more abilities than others. An interesting detail is that all the abilities of a single persona always cost the same amount of spell points, no matter the strength. The equipped persona determines the party member's strengths and weaknesses, because the character itself is a tabula rasa, a blank state without any previous battle prowess. If we examine the persona from the menu, we are allowed to see those strengths and weaknesses it provides, but there is a major problem here. This here is a mid-game persona, Mach, which, according to the game, absorbs wind-type damage and is weak against spirit-type damage. We also see two values, OMP and DMP, which determine the persona's offensive magic damage and as well defense against magic damage. Higher the better. Then there's the species section, which tries to tell you what kind of persona it is in practice, but as you can see, it's not all too clear. What does air even mean here? Or what does weak boson or weak boson, I don't know, mean in the first place? But now for that major problem. The in-game strengths and weaknesses cannot be fully trusted. Here's Mach in the Megaten wiki, which reveals to us that it's in fact weak against fire, ice and earth magic. In addition, it's weak to rifle type damage. It does absorb that wind damage, but it is strong against a lot of other types as well. This is a crucial thing to know when playing Revelations Persona. You cannot completely trust the in-game info, because those two pieces of text are not everything. Another example. Here's Loki in-game, stating it's strong against everything. Sounds pretty damn cool, but nope, wrong. Loki is not strong against everything. And one more thing regarding that spirit damage. During the editing phase of this video, I realized that spirit damage means elemental damage. I had some suspicions that it could be a translation error, so I had to take a look at some Japanese guides regarding Megami Ibunroku Persona, and after a quick translation by Google, spirit damage is in fact a thing. Regardless, I still think it should be called elemental damage. So now that we've touched the topic of damage types, let's have a few words about them. As you can see, there is so many different damage types. 10 types of melee damage, 4 types of guns, and 14 types of magical damage. It's plain unnecessary to make things this complicated, and it's overwhelming. The game encourages you to exploit demon weaknesses, but it is a common situation where the enemy is weak to a very specific type, such as whip damage, meaning that the main goal of targeting weaknesses is thrown out of the window, and then even normal battles become potentially quite lengthy. Reaching the cells allows us to free Mark, and apparently Brad's been jailed too. After freeing both of them, we are met with the captain of the police, who is actually a demon in disguise. The demon attacks us, which leads Brad awakening his persona. Self-centered Brad gets excited by all this, and he asks whether he could join us. Of course I'm allowing him to join, because now I'm having a full party, which means more options and more power to me. Unknowingly, I lock my party for the whole duration of the game, meaning my party for the next 40 hours or so is Steve, Mark, Nate, Mary, and Brad. During the game, there are a couple of occasions in which you're able to recruit a different fifth party member instead of Brad. There is really no way to know this during your first playthrough unless you're following a walkthrough. There's also a hidden, arguably the strongest, fifth party member which requires you to do specific things all the way from the beginning of the game in order to recruit him at some point. We'll talk about unlocking him in the last parts of this video. It's not possible to beat the game short-handed, so eventually someone is forced to join you. So yeah, I'm locked with Brad for the whole duration of the game, whether I like him or not. And I can tell you, he's a very irritating guy for most of the game, but that's how he rocks. After busting out Mark and Brad, we are met with more questionable dialogue, and our next goal is to stop Guido, which means heading to SEBEC through that abandoned factory. Before heading onwards, it is a good time to visit the shopping mall that is the Sun Mall, which is a convenient place for restocking items, upgrading equipment, and to use those spell cards. This is the Velvet Room, an iconic place with the iconic music inspired by the works of David Lynch, in particular Twin Peaks and Blue Velvet. With help of Igor, this place allows you to use those obtained spell cards to create new personas to use in battle. If you're completely new to Persona, Igor explains the process of demon fusion rather well. There's also tips for advanced fusion, so good job Atlus. To create another persona, you need at least 2 spell cards which are compatible with each other. Incompatible ones cannot be fused together, and sometimes it's hard to discern why it is so, but it's usually because of unmatching classes. You see, every single demon has been split into roughly 10 orders, and then every order is split into a few classes. Igor provides 2 types of fusions, a self-service and a full-service fusion. The manual adds some inconsistency by instead using the names Self-Union and Guide Union. Self-service is a much more complex option, which allows the player to do much more precise fusion. The fusion chart looks complicated at first, but in the end it really isn't. The white color represents normal fusions, where the X symbol represents an incompatible fusion. Blue-colored fusions represent a combo fusion, where the demon classes are the same, allowing the end result to be stronger. The red ones are risky fusions, where there's a higher chance of an accident resulting in an abnormal fusion. In this game, these accidents are the only ones capable of providing a persona from the hidden Fool Arcana. These Fool fusions are unfathomably powerful, but in this version you cannot guarantee an accident in any way. So if you're to witness a fusion accident, you can consider yourself really lucky. Then there is the arrow symbols, which indicate that the end result will inherit a skill from the fusion. An arrow to the right allows inheritance from the first spell card. An arrow pointing up allows inheritance from the second card with added stats. And finally, an arrow pointing downwards is the same as the previous one, except with less stats. In addition, the moon phase plays a part regarding inherited skills. It's really a magical playing field for serious experimentation, and the demon fusion is usually the thing that makes players fall in love with Megami Tensei or even Persona. If self-service feels like too much of a hassle, full service has you covered, providing simplicity by ditching all the symbols and colors. Their effects do still matter, but they are not in your face to cause confusion. I do think the full service is a great addition, allowing more relaxed fusion. No matter which service you use, you're allowed to add an item to the fusion in order to alter the end result. Luckily, there's only a select choice of items to use, so you don't necessarily need to add anything ever. However, it's the only way to obtain some special personas and in addition, it provides means to break the balance of the game by allowing personas to inherit absurdly strong skills very early on, but we are not going to discuss how to do that. After deciding how to deal with items, you can see a fully leveled up persona and the fusion can commence. A bit irritating thing is that this fusion cutscene cannot be skipped and you'll be watching it every time. The end result is one of the 22 arcanas, from which all are not compatible with every party member. The game never explains who's able to use what, and it's a certainty that at some point you're equipping a party member with an incompatible persona, rendering it unusable in battle. It's very frustrating and I recommend using a guide regarding compatible arcanas when equipping personas. To equip personas we need to use Igor's Deliver Erase option. The completed fusions are moved here and, as mentioned before, you can only equip personas within your P level. The Velvet Room holds a maximum of 16 personas and after that you have to make room for new ones by deleting the ones you don't use. Sometimes it's beneficial to erase a fully leveled persona because they can award you with powerful rewards. Every party member can equip 3 personas, which brings plenty of variety to the gameplay. Some personas are also character exclusive, but that's an endgame thing. Overall, the demon design including personas are super cool and detailed. They are often inspired by various mythologies across the globe, which is a great idea in my opinion. There's often many iterations of a single demon, which some might even be exclusive in one game. For example, Persona 1 has an exclusive Odin design. The main demon designer in Atlus Products is Kazuma Kaneko, and he has designed some of the most fascinating pieces of art for video games. A fun fact is that he also designed the devil triggers for Dante and Virgil in Devil May Cry 3. After getting mesmerized by the demon fusion, it's time to do some shopping. Restocking restorative items and purchasing new equipment is strongly advised every now and then. Items in this version are usually confusingly named, but luckily there is a tooltip explaining what they are for. Onwards to SEBEC then. To reach SEBEC we need to take the secret passage in that abandoned factory. Here we meet again with Alana, who gets super pissed off because the party is full. If we hadn't taken Brad along, Alana would be recruitable at this point. The next dungeon is called The Secret Corridors, which is a mini dungeon where you are to look for 2 wall switches in order to proceed to SEBEC. Finally a dungeon with some substance, rather than just plain corridors after another. The difficulty spikes a bit at this point, so you might need to do some heavier lifting from now on. Reaching the SEBEC offices introduces a new dungeon healer. This is Kelly, who completely heals your party for a sum of money. It isn't too expensive compared to many other Mega 10 games, so it can be used quite liberally. The SEBEC offices is a multi-floor dungeon, in which all the floors can be accessed by using an elevator. Guido's office is on the 5th floor, however it is recommended to explore the places for some juicy loot. I mean, who wouldn't want themselves an AK-47? Speaking of that Kalashnikov, it can only be used by Nate. Unfortunately, the game has some glaring issues regarding weapons and gear. Every single melee weapon and gun type are meant for a specific party member. For example, Nate can only use rifles and two-handed swords, meanwhile Mark can only use shotguns and axes. Some party members share weapons, for example the main character and Brad share machine guns. The armor is split between male and female party members, and there's only a few unisex pieces of armor. The true problem in this system peeks its head when you're purchasing new equipment. There's really no way to know what is used by whom, and it will lead you spending money on equipment that you're unable to put to use. I really recommend using Megaten Wiki, at least for weapons, for the sake of your own sanity, especially when playing the Revelations version. Regarding loot, this is the first place the game introduces you trapped containers. As far as I know, there's only 3 of a kind. One poisons you, one deals minor damage, and one reduces your health all the way to 1. The traps are non-lethal, so just heal up before going back to the 3D mode. The SEBEC offices are accompanied by some banging music, which you've heard playing for a while. The game overall has a very good soundtrack, filled to the brim with 90s energy, deserving my appreciation at least. It's really nothing like the Persona games we usually associate the series with. The dungeon introduces some particularly threatening demons, from which this flying girl named Kimono has all the potential in the world to wipe the party. It has the ability Buy Strike, which sacrifices itself in order to deal its full health as a damage to random party members, leaving them at least to 1 HP. This is crazy threatening when combined with a party-wide damaging ability such as Ray All. There's also the very first damaging floor tile to be found. This is a dungeon mechanic which damages your party when crossing these tiles. This is a very common Megaten mechanic in dungeons. After reaching the top floor, we indeed meet Guido Sardinia, accompanied by his sidekick Tiny. After hurling some insults back and forth, the party gets surprised by the fact that Guido is a Persona user as well. He gives a small demonstration of his power and leaves Tiny to take care of our party of high schoolers. It's the first boss battle of the game. We begin at a disadvantage due to Guido's demonstration, so heal yourself and begin hitting Tiny. A Persona with a spell Cure All is very handy here. Tiny is weak against ice and earth magic, and if you're able to abuse them, he goes down rather quickly. After beating Tiny, it's time to chase Guido to the underground labs. This place introduces a new dungeon mechanic known as the Dark Zones. It's a pitch-black area where you're to travel by trial and error until you find a way forward. In the Dark Zones, it might be useful to utilize the R2 map. It's great to get some variety in the dungeons after the hospital and the police station. It keeps dungeons fresh and much more enjoyable, and SEBEC was a pretty nice experience. Chasing Guido leads to the room which houses the Deva system. Guido forces the creator of the machine, Dr. Nicholas, to activate it in order to transform the world to his liking. It seems that Guido seeks godhood and the annihilation of the human race. Guido enters the Deva system chamber with the Doctor, and the machine turns on. Dr. Nicholas condemns Guido's actions and sets a trap to Guido, which eventually will result in both of them disintegrating. The Doctor assures that when the machine stops, both of them will be gone forever and the world will return back to normal. However, this leads to an important choice. Mark and Mary think that Dr. Nicholas shouldn't sacrifice himself and we should stop the machine. Meanwhile, Nate and Brad think that the Doctor is just trying to take responsibility for the Deva system and we should let the machine do its thing. We don't even know how to stop it. Somehow Mary does know that the red button in the nearby console shuts down the machine. The final decision is up to us, and we decide to stop the machine, saving the Doctor and unfortunately Guido as well. Regardless of our actions, the machine doesn't stop. It's stopped by a small girl in black who apparently thinks Guido is her father, and then she teleports everyone in the room into another world. The the gang wakes up at a familiar place, which is in fact the school gymnasium, but 6 months back before it was renovated. Have we actually traveled back in time? Not long after, a student interrupts us by informing us that a student named Bruce has been injured by a girl in black, meaning that we have not traveled back in time, and this is actually another world. So get this, that Bruce fellow is actually dating a girl named Selena. Alfred, Bruce, Selena. So this is a Batman game after all. This alternate world houses different versions of some characters we've met before. For example, in this world, Dean Harding is actually caring for his students, and our teacher Miss Smith is acting depressed in contrast to her confident and joyful version. Apparently TJ has changed as well, as one of the students describes her straight on disgusting. Batman himself confirms our suspicions of the alternate world. He was somehow sent to this world with Catwoman 2 months ago, so they know exactly what's going on. He also tells us that the police don't exist here and there are no hospitals, explaining Mary's actions before, meaning that the Mary that has been with us recently is not the same Mary from the beginning. Not long after, the girl in black appears again and changes the world, making this world's school unsafe as well, allowing demons to enter. It quite seems that she's like an omnipresent figure in this world and we are her playthings. Good old creepy little girl trope. Time for another dungeon. Mary rejoins our party, which changes the default formation. This is an irritating thing which happens many times during the game. When your party composition changes, by, for example, someone leaving temporarily, the whole thing scrambles and you have to change everything back manually.
But this is the reason why you save your previous formations.
No, it doesn't work, because the order of the party members changes as well. You see, every character in the formation is numbered from 1 to 5, and their order in the party determines that number. Brad was supposed to be our 5th member, but due to Mary leaving temporarily, she is now considered number 5, making our saved formations not apply as they should. There are occasional surprise attacks by the enemy, flipping the formation around, meaning that your backliners are in front and the enemy is allowed to make a free turn before you. After the battle, the formation stays that way, so you have to make adjustments, but in these situations, fortunately, loading a formation works. Formations in this game are very tedious. Eventually we in fact meet with Chris, if you remember him. He is a very capable guy indeed, as he is also a Persona user and he is aware of all this. He doesn't remember anything about how he got here, but he does remember meeting a girl in white after floating a while in a liminal space of some sort. We offer Chris to join, but he is not here to make friends, and instead he dashes out by himself, leading Brad to actually say something meaningful for the first time. This sudden development of a character doesn't go unnoticed. Reaching the end initiates a dialogue with the girl in black, who is renamed Maggie. The dialogue shines again in its awkwardness. Just lovely. Eventually Maggie summons a Robo-Rat, which is the next boss battle. Robo-Rat is weak to electric spells and it isn't particularly threatening at all, until it decides to use the nuke spell, which effectively deletes, or nukes, Brad and Mary. However, it doesn't take too long for the rest of the party to beat it. If any of the party members are down when a battle ends, they are automatically revived and you have to place them back in the formation. Of course, there are items and skills which also allow resurrection during battle. Destroying Robo-Rat causes Maggie to teleport out of the school and everything returns normal. Afterwards we follow Bruce to the library, which has had a bit of a makeover. The eccentric Kane returns, however this time he is a much more serious fellow. Kane has met with Philemon as well, and he is able to tell us that the two worlds are somehow connected to each other instead of being completely separate dimensions. A dark, closed door has appeared to the library, which holds all the answers, and it can be only opened by the person responsible for everything. Kane doesn't know who it is, but he implies it could be Guido, and suggests we seek Philemon at the shrine for more guidance, so off we go. Welcome to the alternate Lunarvale, which has been split into two, offering plenty of new demons to fight against. Reaching the shrine allows Philemon to appear again. Philemon advises us to seek Guido from the eastern part of Lunarvale. The only way to access the other half is to go through the subway, which is guarded by demons that can be defeated by a holy mirror. However, there is an issue. No one knows where the mirror is. Nate has heard of it before, but his memory is unfortunately shooting blanks. I'm not sure how you're supposed to figure this out, but the holy mirror is located in the town museum. Most likely you should have visited the museum way before and then discovering a holy mirror displayed on a pedestal. I personally just made a wild guess based on what locations are available at the moment. As we are grabbing the mirror, a girl named May appears to us, asking for us not to take the mirror. Unfortunately, we're not obliging, we have to take the mirror. After obtaining the holy mirror, we head towards the subway, which is the next dungeon. It's by far the most monotonous one we've ever been in, because it's a maze which forces you to take the longest way possible towards your goal. The only gimmick it offers are a couple of these tiles, which force you to turn back and find another way. However, there is a cool reference to another Atlus series, the Devil Summoner, in these two posters. The boss of the dungeon is fought at the crossroads, splitting the town in half. He is ugly and smells like poo-poo. He is Yoga Jr. He is supposed to be Yog Sothoth Jr., but maybe the translation team found Americans too dumb to figure out Lovecraftian references. To be honest, I have a similar feeling about all the changes made to the game. It feels like there was zero respect towards the Western audience when they were changing the names. There are just so many dumb decisions. For example, this demon is called Fogly. To citate a certain nerd, what were they thinking? Anyways, Yoga Jr. is probably the easiest boss yet. It absorbs ice damage and it's weak against Ray, Blast, Gravity, and Steve's sword. It can deal impressive single target damage with a strong ice spell, but you can mitigate it by healing every turn. However, it does have an impressive health pool, so it takes about 10 minutes to go down. Maggie appears once again to taunt us, stating that we're setting foot on her turf, which leads to more awkwardness. Entering the eastern Lunarvale locks the western part for a while. This eastern part is kind of like a dark world, which is ruled by Maggie and Guido. The shopping mall has become the black market, but luckily the pharmacy is still able to fill us with joy. The black market is ruled by the Harem queen. She is apparently a painter who is enjoying the acclaim of the residents in the market. However, no one is allowed to leave the market, which is problematic for us. This leaves us no other choice but to visit the queen herself. Time to restock and do some demon fusion, because the next stop is the Karma Palace, the home of the Harem queen. The Karma Palace is the largest dungeon by far, and its main gimmick is pitfalls. It's the first dungeon in the game, which is reminiscent of Shin Megami Tensei, meaning that you need to utilize the main gimmick in order to proceed. At the same time, it has plenty of wrong pitfalls that force you to make a trip back to the floors above until you find the correct ones. All the pitfalls look exactly the same, so it's a matter of trial and error. Luckily, the Karma Palace is rather straightforward, so in my opinion, it's by far the most enjoyable dungeon. The Harem Queen is located 10 floors below. Almost all the pitfalls take to B10 eventually, but only the correct ones will lead to the main goal. The correct way awards you with some occasional items and some paintings to look at made by the queen. Eventually we reach the Harem queen, who is revealed to be Selena. Mary cannot believe it and concludes that Selena must be controlled by the real Harem queen, which is quickly refuted by Selena herself because she is here by her own will. She reveals she never really loved Bruce because in reality Bruce always liked Mary. She has lived her life in vehement jealousy towards Mary. After being warped to this world, Selena met with Maggie, who gave her a black mirror which would fulfill all of her wishes. She used the mirror to make the black market her domain, where everyone would like her unconditionally. However, each and every time the mirror is used, it spawns more moles on Selena's face. Naturally, the party condemns Selena's jealous actions, maybe even a bit too violently, which leads Selena using the mirror to teleport us out of Karma Palace. Unfortunately, we are not done yet because we have to return back to Selena, meaning that we have to do Karma Palace for the second time. It takes roughly 30 minutes to get back to Selena, and this is just plain unnecessary in my opinion. Soon after, Nate, Mark and Brad are turned to stone, and we are met with another important choice, whether we find Selena's art better than Mary's. It's pretty obvious that we choose Mary over Selena. After our decision, Maggie appears and promises all the moles on Selena's face gone if Selena is able to kill us, thus starting a boss battle. The Harem Queen is a special boss, which has to be fought only by the main character and Mary. There are two versions of this boss, and which one you're facing is determined by your previous choice. If, for some reason, you chose Selena instead of Mary, this boss has increased stats, making it much spongier. However, our choice makes her considerably weaker, which is a good thing because it's a rather boring boss. The boss is weak against ice spells, however my strategy was to use the power of the gun with Steve and Mary heals whenever necessary. So far, the game has been quite easy and all the bosses have, more or less, been just damage sponges. After the Harem Queen is defeated, Maggie reveals that she would have never even honored her word because Selena has just been a guinea pig for Guido. Maggie takes her leave, which leads Selena to sink into despair now that her face is permanently filled with moles. Unsurprisingly, this story has a happy ending because eventually Selena apologizes to Mary and lets go of her jealousy. Not long after, Bruce appears and the three have a moment of heart-to-heart. This development in Selena's character leads to the black mirror shattering and Selena's face returns to normal. This also frees Nate, Mark and Brad from their stone imprisonment. All's well that ends well, am I right? Because in the end, Batman and Catwoman are back together. I wish Alfred was still alive. As a parting gift, Selena advises us to chase Maggie to her home, which is a castle located where the hospital originally was. Another parting gift we're getting is a trip back to the black market by walking through the Karma Palace, so we are allowed to enjoy even more random encounters. Oh boy, that's just plain cruel. It's a long way filled with random encounters to reach Maggie's castle. Unfortunately, it feels like a real waste of time because we cannot even enter. We require a key to open the doors to the castle, and the key is located somewhere in the Lost Forest, located on the other side of the town, meaning we have to go all the way back through the subway so that we can access the western Lunarvale. This wouldn't be such a bad thing really if we had good means to manipulate the nature of random encounters. I'm sure there are games with worse rates of encounters, but this is beginning to take a toll on my sanity. Let's have a quick talk about evading battles. The random encounters are usually happening in between steps of 5 to 30, so it's a real gamble. In this game there are no skills or abilities which disable the random encounters. There's the escape option during the battle, but very often it fails, allowing the demons to have a full free turn against you. There's also an item called a bell, which has a chance to make enemies leave the battlefield. Sometimes it makes some of the enemies leave, and sometimes it just fails. The only way to make battles considerably shorter is to use negotiation. The game doesn't allow you to do full negotiation with a demon whose spell card is already in your inventory. Having that demon spell card in your inventory causes that very specific demon type to leave the battle instantly, shortening or even possibly straight up ending the battle. This is your only consistent option in evading random encounters, and sometimes it was a necessity for me to keep going. While traveling to the Lost Forests, I require something to cool off with. That cool off is the casino named Judgment 1999. The Gambler's Heaven is located in the Sun Mall and the Black Market. It houses arguably some of the most powerful melee weapons in the game that can be bought by exchanging credits for them. The Evil Sword, for example, costs 70,000 credits, which is quite a steep sum, considering that 1 credit equals $1. I am at roughly $2,000 at this point of the game, so I'm exchanging 500 to begin with. There's a surprising amount of games to gamble with. Blackjack, poker, dice, slots, and a special brainbuster, the Codebreaker. What sets the Codebreaker apart from the rest of the normal gambling games is that it uses metal cards as a currency. These metal cards can be found here and there during the game, and they can also be dropped randomly in battles. The Codebreaker has also its own reward system, awarding you special items depending on your performance. It's like a Sudoku game where you have 4 tries to figure out the correct placements of numbers in between 1 to 9 in a 3x3 grid. However, those super strong weapons are still locked behind basic gambling, which is admittingly fun, even though RNG is a cruel mistress. Spoiler, I won jack shit. Gambling sure is fun, especially when you cannot lose your own home. However, we do need to continue to the Lost Forest. It's a dungeon with a surprisingly tranquil feel in it. It's unfortunate that it also reflects the overall gameplay, because it's another boring maze. A good thing is that it's a very short one though. It's also the first dungeon where the demon level actually surpasses my party's average level, which means we cannot get any new spell cards here without grinding. From now on, every time there is a new dungeon, the demons exceed our average party level. Luckily, we can catch up slowly if we fight all the random encounters we get. As I just mentioned, it's a quick one, and the only gimmick here is this tile, which forces you to turn left once, so you need to walk backwards to it a few times to get across. The end goal of the dungeon is this gingerbread house, where we meet May, a girl in white. As expected, she is the good version of Maggie. The key to Maggie's castle is the half of a compact May carries, and coincidentally it bears resemblance to Mary's compact. However, this magical compact, which grants wishes, was used to create this alternate world. May was originally the only person here until Guido entered the world, which birthed the evil version, Maggie. The magical compact was split in half, resulting May unable to control the world as usual. Maggie and Guido have the second half, and the one who gets both of the halves are able to control the world how they please. Unfortunately, we need May's half to get into the castle. This conversation leads to the most important set of choices in the whole game. Depending on your actions here, you lock yourself to a canonical good ending or an alternative bad ending. Locking the bad ending cuts the game much shorter than it actually is, so if you want to see the game till the end, you have to pick the correct ones. 3 questions, 3 correct answers. If any of the 3 alters from these choices, you are locked to the bad ending. It's a bit unforgiving in my opinion, especially when the first one isn't that obvious. To be completely honest, none of these choices seem too important, but in reality, the consequences are massive. If you pick the correct ones, Mei gives up her health willingly. The wrong ones force us to another boss battle. Unfortunately, we cannot use the health ourselves, and Mei cannot teleport us to the castle because it is not her creation. So, this means... And here we are back again. Whew. Placing the half on the pedestal makes it disappear, allowing Guido to have it. It was an obvious trap, but we really had no other choice. Now we can only chase Guido. Welcome to Castle Mana, Maggie's home, which is the biggest maze so far. Most likely you've already pieced it together that the dungeon design in this game can be summed up to a phrase, an unbelievably boring set of mazes which force you to take the longest route possible to reach the end. There are few exceptions, but there's just not enough gimmicks involved. Castle Mana is probably to me the worst dungeon in this game. It's a 5-floor dungeon whose core idea is to travel through the monotonous castle corridors in order to find 2 dark zones, which eventually lead to the end goal. It's roughly a 3-hour long crawl without saving, because this dungeon has 0 Augustus trees, which is painful. Luckily this dungeon has 0 really dangerous encounters, so you should be fine. Beating Castle Mana awards you a meeting with Guido. We are also reconnected with Chris, who's had his ass whipped by Guido. With both of the compact halves in the hands of Guido, the Chaos Mirror is complete. This leads to the creation of Guido's castle, Deva-Yuga, which is erected in the real Lunarvale. The Chaos Mirror is capable of altering both dimensions, and it's Guido's endgame in pursuing godhood. Guido departs to Deva-Yuga and seeks a demon called Salavino at us, initiating a boss battle. The battle starts up with a slight disadvantage set by Guido, with Mark and Nate having only 25% of their health remaining. Heal up and smash the boss. In a sense, Salavino is much like Yoga Jr. It has only a singular threatening ability, Ice Arrow, which randomly hits a couple of your party members. If you're unlucky, all the hits will focus on a single party member, which most likely leads to a single death. It's not an issue to get a single party member up again though. Salavino is beaked to basic fire, ice and wind damage, but the power of the gun works wonders as well. Much like Yoga Jr., Salavino has a bit more health than usual, and it takes a bit under 10 minutes to go down. Now the party has a new dilemma: how to get back to the normal world. The only known way is the Chaos Mirror, which is in the hands of Guido and Maggie. It's a moment of desperation which makes Brad crumble for a while, but with the power of friendship, he pulls himself together, returning to his obnoxious self. So, how do we proceed? The solution is a bit random, but Mary suggests going to the local haunted house, which has had plenty of rumors of people disappearing. so completely based on rumors, we head to the haunted house. We leave Chris behind, and as usual we are forced to redo the whole dungeon backwards. The haunted house is conveniently quite close to our current location. However, some of the roads have been cut off due to the changes in the real world, so you might need to use other roads to travel there. It's been a while since we've saved the game, so that's our priority number 1. It would be a good idea to stop by the black market to restock as well. The haunted house offers us nothing new. It continues where Castle Mana left off, but fortunately it's a much shorter experience. The haunted house revolves around this large, dark zone which connects many routes together. Aside from that, it offers plenty of fun for people who enjoy crazy amounts of random encounters in brown corridors. I know it might feel like the script is rushed regarding dungeons, but there isn't really anything exciting to talk about. It's just brown corridors after another, and a single dark zone, which reaches all the 3 levels of the dungeon. Before the last room, we hear someone calling Mary's name. That someone appears to be a demon called Norn. Weirdly enough, Norn seems to be familiar with Mary, and apparently she's been looking for her. Nate realizes that Norn sounds like Nancy, Mary's mother, if you still remember her. It's up to us whether we fight Norn or not. We decide not to engage Norn, which dispels an illusion, and Norn is transformed into Nancy. Nancy had a dream where young Mary got lost in the haunted mansion, and naturally she went to look for her. By following Mary's voice, she was eventually transported to the alternate world. So there's indeed a portal between dimensions in the haunted house. Just as we're about to piece together the mystery between the 2 worlds, the portal becomes unstable, so we need to hurry. Unfortunately, someone has to stay behind to keep the portal active. Nancy volunteers, and we promise to return to pick her up. Interestingly, the portal takes us straight to Guido's castle, the Deva-Yuga. This is because there is no haunted house in the real world, instead there's the SEBEC building, which is exactly where Deva-Yuga was erected. The party is transported to a familiar room, which is where the Deva system is housed. Here we meet with Dr. Nicholas, who did survive our previous encounter. However, he is not himself, and he begins to ramble about death and destruction. Not long after, Guido appears before us and explains that everyone here thinks the same as he does. He boasts about being the only one in existence able to subdue everyone under his will, surpassing even all the rulers and dictators in the history. Apparently Guido is also aware of Mary's history and taunts us to seek him in order to get more answers. Now that's a classic villain move there. Next up, the Grand Marble Palace of Guido, the Rock Sardinia, the Deva-Yuga. To be fair, I was a bit skeptical with this dungeon, only because how disappointing everything has been after the Karma Palace. However, Deva-Yuga surprises me positively, and it's actually a fairly straightforward experience. There are some pitfall tiles, in which one of them has to be manually activated, but the most pleasant thing here is that you don't have to take the longest route possible to the end. This dungeon also hosts these cybernetically augmented men in black called the Black Men. Yeah! They are surprisingly beefy, greatly outleveling the rest of the demons here. Their special drop is the medal card, which allows you to do more Codebreaker if you like the minigame. One of the doors is locked, and Mary tells that Guido is not there. The final 6th floor of the Deva-Yuga houses an interesting puzzle. There's 21 tiles in this room, in which 9 of them have a red ceiling above them. You need to step on these 9 tiles, coloring the floor as well. However, the thing is that stepping again on a red tile whitens the tile, so it needs to be activated again. A pretty simple, but so exciting puzzle which this game desperately needed. Deva-Yuga might be my favorite dungeon alongside the Karma Palace. When all the 9 tiles have been lit, the door leading to Guido is open. We have finally reached Guido, and Mark goes absolutely insane. All jokes aside, Guido is acting very odd. Now that he has reached his goal, he thinks everything's meaningless. With a touch of nihilism added, he poses an interesting question: what can a human do when he has reached all of his goals? Without a goal, everything is meaningless, so it would be just better if you never tried to climb to the top. Guido has very much lost all of his willpower to continue, and instead he is choosing the melancholic abyss. Everything seems to be going pretty well, and Guido might actually give up peacefully. Until Nate decides to taunt him, leading Guido to regain his resolve, which leads to the long-awaited boss battle against him. Guido is a really easy boss, due to his weakness to the almighty power of the gun. He is just all bark, no bite, and it doesn't take too long for him to go down. However, it is not over yet, because his persona, named Massacre, takes control of Guido's body and transforms him into Super Guido. Super fucking Guido.
Alrighty then.
Super Guido is actually where the boss battle really begins. Alongside tripled health points, he has some potentially very threatening skills up in his sleeves, such as a single target instant kill attack. However, here he mostly focuses on using his new godly powers, which are all heavy light-based damage. Fortunately, my team is quite resistant to light damage. Mark even reflects it. In the end, Super Guido is really easy because he is weak against, you guessed it, the power of the gun. Goodbye, Guido. Guido finds satisfaction in his defeat, even describing himself happy. For him to live was to die. In his last words, Guido sheds some light to the connection between the two worlds. The alternate Lunarvale is just a product of the imagination of the real Mary. A real utopia where an ideal version of herself lives, which is the Mary that has been tagging along us for a while. In her utopia, there aren't hospitals or law enforcement or even SEBEC due to her hatred towards Nancy's negligence. The world serves her true wants and needs, which were denied due to her hospitalization. For some reason, the SEBEC Deva system synchronized with Mary's psyche, manifesting this other world. It also resulted in Mary's personality split into multiple splinters. At first, there was May to be her friend, and later on Maggie due to Guido's experimentations. As a last parting gift, Guido tells us that the real Mary is located in the Deva-Yuga, which causes the ideal Mary to panic, because she doesn't really exist. She runs off, leaving the party. There's really no other choice but to find the real Mary somewhere in the Deva-Yuga. Before moving on, we explore Guido's office, which holds an interesting tapestry that says, "Life is like an illusion, like a dream waiting to be awakened." The butterfly dream. The real Mary is located in that locked room we've seen before. To reach that room, we need to use a specific pitfall to get dropped in front of the room housing the real Mary. She is connected to the Deva system, which also works as a life support, so she cannot be easily disconnected from the machine. The ideal Mary is here as well, and she goes through a mental episode, crumbling due to the fact that she caused it all. It was her unhappiness which, in conjunction with the Deva system and Guido, created the whole mess. In reality, Mary was very dissatisfied with her life in the hospital, which made her very jealous of everybody, leading her to lose interest in life overall. Nothing in her life had any meaning. After a while, Maggie and the ideal Mary disappear back to the alternate world, leading the party to contemplate whether the Deva system should just be destroyed, killing Mary in the process and thus restoring everything back to normal. The whole revelation is described as an opening of a Pandora's box, or Mary's box, which has released a myriad of misfortune upon the world. It's a real logic versus emotion situation for the party. It's a strongly emotional moment, and in the end, the group decides not to abandon Mary. Not long after, something happens to the Deva system. Its core shielding shatters, and the core itself disappears, making us unable to return to the alternate world. Something has happened in the alternate world. Mary is unconscious, is also refusing us, and she shatters the mirror in front of us. Apparently the ideal Mary dropped a mirrorless compact on the ground, so the crew picks it up. This causes the real Mary's green compact to resonate. The green compact has a mirror inside, so we test it out if it would allow us to travel between worlds. Unfortunately, that is not the case. The real compact holds no such power. Fortunately, a piece of the chaos mirror can be found on the floor, and it's a perfect fit with the green compact, which allows us to travel back to the alternate world. Before warping back, I'd like to talk about this particular moment. Just before you grab the piece of the chaos mirror, you can talk to Brad when he's next to Mary's bed. He tries to wake up Mary by telling her a funny story why he was called Brown Bags. Apparently he soiled himself in middle school, which to him was very embarrassing. He was a subject of ridicule for a long time, and that led him becoming the person he is right now. As a high schooler, he realizes that he's just fooling himself by acting tough, and he makes peace with his defecating history, explaining that nowadays he thinks it's just plain funny. It's actually an interesting character development, which is most likely in many other forms relatable. I'm sure we've all acted tough beyond our true selves during our youth just to hide our own insecurities. Of course, this doesn't mean that adults don't do it as well. This moment is even stronger in the Japanese version because Brad is nicknamed Brown straight from the beginning. It's obviously a missed opportunity for revelations. Another thing I'd like to add here is that if you're locked to the bad ending, this is where the game ends. The group accepts the fact that nothing can be done after the mirror shatters. The world does eventually return to normal, however, running away from the true inner conflict leaves Mary's personality splintered, leaving the situation a mystery. However, continuing towards the good ending transports us back to the Lost Forest, where we meet again with Nancy. She apparently followed Mary's voice again, and after fainting, she woke up at the Lost Forest. Nate explains the whole situation to Nancy, and then we all decide to follow Mary's voice, so off towards the gingerbread house we go. The voice in the gingerbread house is Maze, who does recognize her mother even though there is no Nancy in this world. May tells us that Maggie seeks to destroy this world, and she went to seek the most evil version of Mary, who is fittingly known as Pandora. This Pandora eventually devours Maggie and sets its course to erase all existence. Nate figures out that Pandora exists in the school beyond the dark door in the library. Indeed, it can be opened by a person who is behind all this, which is Mary. To open the door to Pandora, we need 3 compacts and the power of ideal Mary. This means we are missing 1 more compact. Unfortunately, we do not know where it is, but we do know that the ideal Mary is located somewhere in the deeper parts of the forest. This explains why the Lost Forest is a rather short dungeon. It continues beyond the gingerbread house, therefore doubling its size. This is actually the place where I find myself dying for the first time. Unbeknownst to me, these blue demons called insectoids reflect the awesome power of the gun, which causes heavy casualties. They also possess a skill called Hell Eyes, which is a low chance instant kill attack. As a last-ditch effort, I try to use the previously mentioned bell item, which has a chance to make the demons flee the battle. Unfortunately, none of the demons are gone, and after that, a single Hell Eyes cleans up Nate as well, sending me back to the main menu. The second portion of the forest is probably the first slightly challenging dungeon, mostly because of one missing party member. However, I do think that challenge is a very welcome thing, because the game has been almost laughably easy for the last 15 hours. After redoing the Lost Forest, we find the ideal Mary hiding behind a blank mask. That's a quite nice detail in my opinion. The ideal Mary is acting laughably delusional, even thinking it was she who used Guido after all. Yeah, right. She is completely lost in self-pity, which leads to the final important choice, where we can agree with her delusions, or we can simply deny her claims by telling her not to run away anymore. And of course, the only correct option is to tell her not to run away. This is one of those moments which should be very meaningful and emotional, but then the moment is ruined by these jaw-dropping pieces of dialogue. Nice job, Nate, I think you could have said it in another way. Fortunately, the ideal Mary comes to her senses and joins the party once again. It's time to slam dunk the demons in the forest. Okay, so now for that final third compact. It is held by Mary's conscience in a cavern behind Philemon's shrine, which is our next goal. Philemon appears to inform us that the real Mary is dying, and her conscience is preparing for the final trip beyond the Sea of Souls. Fortunately, all is not lost, and we can still make it to save her soul. However, there is a gimmick involved. This particular dungeon can only be entered by the main character and the ideal Mary, meaning we are at severe disadvantage. This cyan-walled cavern contains 9 levels of action before reaching the Sea of Souls. With a party size of 2, it's a dangerous place. It also contains some special demons representing negative emotions, which naturally cannot be recruited. They possess an instant death skill based on expel type damage, so there is a possibility of a struggle if you're rocking a persona weak to that type of damage. A particularly dangerous demon would be Dominion. This demon is usually positioned to the backlines, which complements their innate ability to reflect the majority of magic damage. This means they are meant to be dealt with physical damage if you're lacking death or curse-based spells. The thing which makes them dangerous is the skill called Glass Wall, which makes the whole enemy side reflect all incoming damage for 3 turns. It's a bit of a large dungeon, however the route to the end goal is short. I very much recommend reaching the Sea of Souls quickly without exploring the place thoroughly. We'll continue this topic very soon. However, the penultimate level of the dungeon holds a very special room you should explore when you can. You can't miss it if you're just seeking the bottom floor. We are met with a mirror image of the main character playing an arcade cabinet. I wonder if he's playing Street Fighter. All jokes aside, this is the place where the consequences of your choices come into play. It's a check of your moral compass, and you're praised or berated based on your actions during the last 25 hours. For being a very good boy, we are given key items that allows us to fuse the ultimate personas for every party member. Some of these personas are incredibly powerful, capable of stomping the game with no effort. So before moving on, I want to see what game our inner self plays. Groove on Fight, huh? So it wasn't Street Fighter after all.
What a shame.
Hey, thanks JC. The 9th floor houses the Sea of Souls, an endless expanse filled with bubbled souls. Meeting the true Mary's consciousness starts a dialogue between the two Marys. For some reason this part feels like it's supposed to be one of the most crucial parts of the game's story, where eventually Mary finds inner peace, coming to terms with her recent history filled with nihilism, but the whole dialogue feels very thin. It feels like those two are speaking of two different topics. Not sure if this story is supposed to be exactly like this, but maybe this part's effectiveness has been made lesser by the hasty translation, a lack of context that is. In the end, Mary's consciousness gives us the final compact, allowing us to enter Avidea World, where Pandora resides. Obtaining the compact disables all the random encounters in the cavern, meaning now it's time to explore the place. It's unbelievably pleasant to explore the place without having to do battle within roughly 10 seconds of exploring. While making our return to the school library, we meet with Batman and Catwoman. They inform us that the eastern Lunarvale is now completely destroyed, but they managed to cross the threshold in time. We're still going to leave the couple behind, as we have one final dungeon awaiting for us. The ideal Mary cites the magic words, and the dark door of Avidea World opens. So here we are, the final dungeon of the game, Avidea World, the ultimate expression of nothingness and the throne of the utmost nihilism within Mary. Avidea World is no joke. It's a humongous set of 8 mazes offering the toughest demons the game can offer, with roughly 20 levels in variance. The lowest level demon here is 51 and the highest is 75. The overall difficulty spike is very noticeable, and the Avidea World gets tougher in every part.
But Hypo, now you're getting that challenge you've been looking for.
Yeah, that's very true, but I would also like to have fun. You see, the demons are not the only thing providing challenge. The thing is that this dungeon needs to be completed in one sitting. There is only one Augustus tree, one Kelly's fountain, and one velvet room in this dungeon, and they are located in the very beginning. But that's normal to this game, isn't it? Yeah, however, the difference is that this dungeon is roughly 6 hours long without guides. I cannot express my astonishment enough while playing this dungeon. It goes on and on and on and on. So how's the dungeon design then? Unfortunately, we are back to the boring void of gimmicks. Only one level from the 8 has a gimmick, and it's unfortunately just a dark zone. Avidea World is simply an endurance test. So roughly 6 hours later we reach Pandora. The cutscene revealing Pandora is an example of laziness because it uses the Japanese model of Mary instead of the Americanized version. Anyways, Pandora is a creature straight out of nightmares, a shambling beast posing 5 pairs of limbs. Pandora did indeed steal the core of the Deva system, which it describes as the gate to paradise. Its paradise is obviously a complete erasure of existence. It's time for the final boss, and damn, the music is crazy good. Extra points for reprising a familiar motif within the game. To begin with, let's throw in a quick level comparison. Pandora is at level 85, meanwhile our average party level is mere 51. Avidea World really cranks up the levels. Fortunately, Pandora is a punching bag as well, because of its glaring weakness against guns. The power of the almighty gun is back at it again. My strategy is to buff up everyone and then beat the boss with guns. Mary keeps the party alive when healing is required. As expected, the final boss cannot be this easy, because within 2 minutes it transforms into a second form, commencing the true battle. The second form has its level increased all the way to 99, and this boss is a real slammer. Pandora is equipped with the most damaging ice spell in the game, which basically kicks my teeth in. To put the situation simply, I'm not equipped with a single persona that can stand against Pandora's second form. Obviously Pandora cleans house, making my first attempt at the boss a laughable try. This also means that Pandora effectively wipes the whole 6 hours of progression in the game, which is a humbling experience. I think I definitely need a moment off this game, maybe to lie in a shower or something. Alright, so Pandora obviously requires some preparation, which is something you have no idea of until she sends you packing with a demoralizing blow. That is if you're not using a walkthrough to begin with. First and foremost, it's mandatory to at least resist ice damage. If you can null it or absorb it, it's even better. However, do keep in mind that this isn't the only mega damaging skill Pandora has, and we'll talk about it later, but the ice resistance is the first must-have thing to obtain. To this playthrough, this means unavoidable grinding, because I wasn't clearly prepared enough for a huge spike in difficulty. Grinding in JRPGs is usually boring, and understandably so. I'm not a big fan either, but it is what it is. In Persona 1, the thing that makes grinding irritating is how the experience is awarded. Remember that party members gain experience based on how they fare in combat, meaning that the slowest members might not even get a chance to do much. In this playthrough, upon reaching Pandora, Steve was at level 56 and Mark was at level 41. That's a huge difference, which is the result of one of the characters being fast and the other one being slow. Another key factor behind this is an imbalance of equipment. As I've implied multiple times before, guns are very prolific in this game, and the machine guns, which are used by the main character and Brad, are arguably the most powerful ones. Mark has shotguns, which are not nearly as powerful, and he is also a slow character, usually moving last. This results in Mark gaining very low amounts of experience compared to others, effectively tanking the average party level massively. For example, here's the experience spread after Super Guido. You can really see who does the heavy lifting during the game. Another thing regarding guns is that some of them are very dependent on the position in the formation. Let's continue with Mark and shotguns. Mark is obviously a frontliner, a tank with a high health pool. However, he is very limited in shotgun usage when placed in the front. In this game, shotguns work the best in the middle lines, in contrast to basic logic. In the end, Mark gets to use the power of the gun very rarely. Another example is Mary. She is obviously a backliner, kind of a support mage with the lowest amount of health. She uses handguns, which do not work at all in the backlines. In order to use the handguns more, she needs to be brought forward, which is not a good idea for a frail girl. Although guns are commonly very overpowered, they work inconsistently. Another thing which is a good thing to talk about are the bugs. The game doesn't have big issues, don't you worry, but there is a tactic in Atlus games that involves buffing your party and debuffing the enemy. These tactics usually allow you to beat difficult enemies that are way higher in level than you are, but here the mechanics are partially bugged. In this version, you should be able to stack buffs and debuffs 4 times in total. So how do they work in reality? Well, you can stack buffs 7 times in total, and debuffs do not work against bosses at all. This means you cannot debuff boss damage at all in this game, so everything hurts a lot unless you're buffing your own defense. To be honest, buffs and debuffs are rare skills in this game, and it's clear that they wanted to make the game beatable without them. Usually in Megaten games, buffs and debuffs are mandatory. Okay, so where to grind? Well, there are a couple of choices, which are the Avidea World, the Lunarvale itself, and then the Lunarvale ruins located in the northwestern corner. What makes the ruins special is that it contains almost every single demon in the game. This also means that the level variety goes from 1 to 99. The demons get tougher the lower you get, and at this point of the game, you need to traverse 4 to 5 levels in order to reach demons matching your level. And by the way, there is not a single save point in the dungeon. Personally, I'd only recommend this place if you need a certain spell card for a fusion. This leaves you with Avidea or the overworld, so pick your poison. At this point of the game, it's quite common that people turn their gazes onto the ultimate personas, and for a reason. Some of them are crazy powerful, even having a skill just called boss damage, which deals absurd amounts of damage to bosses. All the other enemies resist it or are plain immune. So let's take a look at those ultimate personas. Every single one of them requires roughly a P level of 60, which most of my party members are nowhere near at, especially Mark. Mark's ultimate persona requires a P level of 59, so there is a lot of grinding to do if I'd want them. In the end, the only ultimate persona I'm able to use is Brad's ultimate, Dark Side, which requires merely a P level of 54. Unfortunately, it's one of the worst ones against Pandora due to its weakness against ice. So yeah, I did not go for the ultimate ones due to the heavy grind it requires. So how much did I grind in the first place? About 14 hours. Yep, and only one ultimate persona, which I didn't even use in the first place. So think about that. One last feature I have not mentioned at all is the jewel system. Every now and then you obtain various jewels which can be exchanged for various items and essences at the Sun Mall. The essences are a feature which allows you to tweak your party members by giving them permanent extra stat points. Based on the moon phase, the required jewels exchanged for an essence are different. However, the manual lies about this, so don't trust the manual completely. According to the manual, on Moon Phase 1, Technique Essence should only cost a single Alexandria, but here it asks for a Magma Stone as well. The usage of essences isn't required, but it's a way to min-max in the game. Damn, this game has a lot of systems, but now we've covered them all for good. Okay, so I'm not doing Avidea again without a map, so this time I'm using an online guide. With the help of an online map, the dungeon still takes roughly 90 minutes to reach Pandora. Here's my final party setup with an in-game time of 42 hours. Alright, so Pandora's second form is a real endurance battle, with a whopping health pool of 15,000, and she moves twice every turn. The main gimmick of the fight is Pandora's ability to change its strengths and weaknesses mid-battle during its 2 turns. The form change is indicated by her hair color. Red is the attack form, weak to physical damage, and blue is a kind of a like support form, weak to some forms of magic. The form switches can be very irritating depending on your luck with the form changes. The red hair Pandora has a signature ability, Butterfly Storm or Bee Storm, which does unique magical damage, meaning it cannot be specifically resisted. However, there is a way to reflect this attack, but we'll cover it when we talk about cheesing this boss. Without cheese, Butterfly Storm is always a slammer, especially when Pandora decides to use it twice in a row. Butterfly Storm hits every party member with heavy damage and also adds a random ailment to each one, so it's a fun one. Then there's that Glacier All, which is the main reason why ice resistance is the bare minimum here. Apart from those two skills, this form doesn't pose any alarming threat. It can throw in annoyances, such as disabling your ability to change persona or disabling health recovery for a while, and those two can sometimes be tricky to deal with. The blue hair Pandora's first signature is the Symphony, which tries to inflict guilt status, disabling attacking for a while. It's meant to stabilize the incoming damage so that she can focus on using the supportive skills this form has. The second signature is All Guard, which just nulls all the incoming damage for a turn. In addition to her signatures, she is able to buff her own defense, lower your attack, or even remove party buffs completely. She also possesses a medium strength healing spell. Basically, this form is to stabilize incoming damage directed to Pandora while irritating the player. Alright, so now it's time for the cheddar strats, so skip a bit ahead if you don't want to hear them. If you've managed to hoard many pieces of an item called M-Guard, you can reflect almost all the damage the red Pandora can do. This item reflects all magical damage for a single turn, meaning Glacier All and even Butterfly Storm are directed to Pandora instead. Just have the quickest party member to use M-Guard every turn. Another way to make this boss a cakewalk is to abuse its miracle weakness. Pandora is always weak to miracle damage, no matter the color of the hair, so if you're able to target that weakness, Pandora is super easy. So the question is, what are the miracle skills? To be honest, it's something you will never figure out unless you're using a guide. There are only two miracle spells in the whole game, Holy White and Holy Word. These spells are known by a handful of personas, from which two of them, Bard and Valzante, are the most likely ones to obtain regarding their level. I had fused myself Bard, but naturally, I didn't know about the miracle spells during my playthrough. Another greatly abusable skill is boss damage, which I talked about before. It can be learned by three personas, from which two of them require crazy amounts of grinding, so they are most likely out of the picture. The most common boss damage user is Ra, the ultimate persona of the main character. Without cheese, it's a long battle where failing results in you going back to the beginning of the whole dungeon. Luckily, this time Pandora goes down, ending a long, over 30-minute battle and concluding the game. In the end, Pandora is an enjoyable, challenging boss, the only one in the whole game, and it's easily the best boss Revelations can offer. Defeating Pandora allows all the fragments of Mary return back to their origin. The ideal Mary returns everyone back to the real world, and Philemon appears for the last time to congratulate us.
There is nothing more for me to say. You have found your way back to the world as it should be. The smile on your face is no longer a mask, but your true self. No longer do you have to fear when you encounter problems, troubles, or pains. Just ask yourself who you are. You now will be able to withstand any adversaries and conflicts that may arise in your life. Go now into a bright and promising future.
the world gradually normalizes, and everyone seems to be back at their mundane lives. In the end, Mary returns back to her normal life, allowing her to live her life how she always wanted. Before the credits roll, we get to see what's happened to all the 5 characters who tagged along for this over 40-hour session. The game eventually concludes to a well-known philosophical statement by René Descartes, "I think, therefore I am." And that was Revelations Persona. So how was it? To be honest, I'm a bit torn with this. I did have fun with it, but obviously it's very flawed. It's a very feature-rich game, and I'd argue that there's way too many of them. The developers did admit that they overbloated the game. The translation work is indeed as horrible as the internet states, and it makes the game occasionally uncomfortable to play. The US manual is missing a lot of valuable information compared to the Japanese one, and in addition, it's filled with errors as well. Not sure if they believed in the US version at all, so they just half-assed the manual as well, settling on a much shorter black and white manual. I guess translating the manual was also done in a crazy hurry. I do heavily recommend using Megaten wiki resources for at least items and equipment if you're deciding to play Revelations Persona. The gameplay overall to me is enjoyable, and it's clearly one of the strongest elements in the game. Combat has that familiar Megami Tensei feeling with some new added twists. It's very much a game of exploiting enemy weaknesses, but the game's rather forgiving if you're unable to do so. It's very rare that you're getting bodied for not building your party correctly, which is common in Megami Tensei. As long as you can find a way to deal reasonable damage and someone is able to heal your party effectively, you're good to go. I, for example, just gunned my way through the majority of the game, stomping the vast majority of encounters from normal enemies to bosses. If the enemy wasn't resisting guns, I always used them, and otherwise I used spells. Of course you're rewarded for targeting enemy weaknesses, but it's not necessary. This leniency is very casual friendly, and most likely it brought the series many new players. On the other hand, there's way too many categories of damage, which makes things unnecessarily complicated. This is a huge hassle in the basic gameplay, as enemies can be weak to a particular sub-category, and it's very likely that you cannot target that weakness when you would need to. Luckily, they did simplify things in the future releases. Another gameplay critique that comes to my mind is the overall length of the battles. The battle sequences look very detailed and stylish, but the flow itself could be slightly faster in my opinion. Reportedly, this slowness was intentional because the team wanted the game to look visually impressive. The formation system feels like a waste. Most of the time it exists to be forgotten until you're forced to redo it because someone left the party for a while or you were placed on a surprise attack. This system is unique to Persona 1 and it was never revisited again in the sequels. The encounter rates are absurd, and the funniest thing is that Revelations Persona actually has the most forgiving encounter rates between all the versions. The combat experience was also increased to match fewer random encounters and also to prevent players getting under-leveled, which I nevertheless did. There's still way too many random encounters, and the escape option works very rarely. The PSP version had a spell called Estoma added in, which removes the majority of random encounters until a certain moon phase, so that version has some great quality of life introduced to it. The PSP version's encounter rates are even more absurd if you don't have that Estoma spell. So ultimately, this would mean that the very original Japanese version has it the worst. In all honesty, the encounter rates would not feel that bad if the dungeon design was better. Dungeons are monotonous labyrinths in various colors, which usually force you to take the longest road possible to reach the end. There are simply not enough gimmicks to keep the dungeons interesting. A dark zone once in a while doesn't make a good dungeon. I'd rather take the hellish Shin Megami Tensei dungeons than these mazes of nothingness any time. Reportedly, there was criticism towards the lack of save points in dungeons, which made playing difficult for the working people back in the mid-90s. Yeah, I concur. Avidea World and Castle Mana especially were rather brutal in that sense. To move on a positive side, another strength of the game lies in the atmosphere. It's a very different Persona game, which most of us have become accustomed with. There is nothing wrong with the modern style Persona, but I'm a huge fan of the PS1 feeling. There is that distinctive 90s darkness and mystique which serves the game very well and really separates Megami Ibunroku Persona from the rest of the Persona games. The soundtrack is filled with bangers after another, from exhilarating battle music to gloomy ambient and to meme-worthy earworms. Regarding music, call me an edgy boy if you want, but I greatly prefer the PS1 version over the PSP one. I emphasize again, there is nothing wrong with the PSP music, but to me, there is just so much more atmosphere in the PS1 version. Moving on to the negative side once again, the main story isn't a huge celebration of magnificence, and most likely a lot is due to the detrimental translation work, which had an odd effect on me during the playthrough. The further I got in the game, the less interested I became of the story, and eventually it was just gameplay without any substance beyond. There's plenty of hilarious dialogue that cannot be read seriously, which sinks the ship of storytelling into the depths unknown. If you'd like to enjoy the story, please play the PSP version or wait for the fan translation of Megami Ibunroku Persona, because there is one actually in the making by Tom, the retro translator. The official translation makes some of the characters very corny, which is unfortunate. I feel like there's a lot more underneath the surface, but Revelations doesn't do justice for the characters. There are touching moments, but they are in the minority. All this is very unfortunate because Atlus clearly put a lot of work on these characters. Most of them are even inspired by real people from other forms of media. On the brighter side, a thing that I really liked is that your actions have actual consequences, although the biggest one, which is the one determining an ending, is a bit unforgiving. It's pretty easy to get locked into the bad ending, which cuts the game considerably shorter. However, I do think consequences are one of the most important things, which makes a game an RPG, so great work, Atlus. The game does offer some replayability by choosing a different fifth party member, allowing different situations to arise. We've talked about Brad, Alana, and Ellen before, but now's a good time to talk about the hidden and arguably strongest one. If you remember Chris, he is that hidden party member in question, and in order to recruit him, you need to perform some specific tasks beforehand. Some of the tasks need to be done in the very early game before visiting Mary in the hospital. Here is a picture how to do it. To put it simply, you need to talk to specific people in specific order, visit specific places, and then deny Brad, Ellen, and Alana in order to unlock him. Pause the video now if you want to read the full instructions, but do keep in mind that the picture uses Japanese names. In addition to battle strength, recruiting Chris can be beneficial in another way because it expands the story a little. Chris is actually related to Guido. However, there is one party member that was completely forgotten during the game. What about Yuki? In the very beginning of this video, we discussed very briefly the topic of a major change in the US version. So here it is. Revelations Persona is actually an incomplete game. There's supposed to be a second, completely unique, playable story alongside the one we just saw. The missing content is commonly known as the Snow Queen quest, which involves different characters, including Yuki. This room in the school gymnasium is the intended trigger point to the Snow Queen quest, but in Revelations, the room cannot be interacted with even though there is a clear box begging to be opened. The reason behind disabling the story has never been officially disclosed, but there are plausible theories claiming that there was not enough time to translate it, so therefore it was disabled. There's even a single translated and dubbed Snow Queen Philemon cutscene in the game files, which supports this theory. The Snow Queen quest exists in the game files, but it cannot be triggered without external tools that are needed to manipulate the game code. With manual triggering, it's totally possible to play the Snow Queen quest in Revelations, but it's not an enjoyable ride. Nothing is translated, and all the dialogue is just random symbols because the Western PS1 cannot read Japanese, and in addition, the game is very prone to freezing or just bugging out. The flow of the gameplay is exactly the same in both of the scenarios, meaning that the Snow Queen quest can indeed be finished in Revelations, but it requires excessive amounts of patience, and it's very likely that you'll need a walkthrough to beat the game. Another huge hurdle is a special key item which needs to be purchased outside of a normal shop. This item should cost 5,000 yen, which is very reasonable, but in Revelations it was never adjusted, meaning it actually costs $5,000. This means massive amounts of unavoidable grinding. Personally, there is one deeply frustrating thing in this second scenario, which is the dungeon design. After being subjected to many boring ones, it makes me deeply frustrated to know that the Snow Queen quest has all the interesting dungeons with plenty of gimmicks providing fresh experiences.
What a shame.
Indeed. I very much advise you not to try the Snow Queen quest in Revelations. Instead, turn your gaze towards the PSP version, which has it working normally. Another option is to wait for that fan translation, which is something I'm doing myself. If and when it gets released, we'll make a return to this game in another video, covering the second story in full. In conclusion, Revelations Persona feels like an unintended way to experience Megami Ibunroku Persona. The gameplay is there, but the rest is botched and disconnected because of the great Americanization and the translation work. Therefore, I recommend waiting for the fan translation if you want the real intended PS1 experience. Of course, Revelations is still a playable version, as you can see, although incomplete, so if you're into looking at this exclusive loading screen thousands of times, go boot up Revelations Persona right now. And one more thing. Who's responsible for this whole wave of changes to begin with? Well, it was this guy, the director of the game, Koji Okada, also known as Cozy Okada. Think about that. I think we've been here long enough already, so let's go touch some grass. Thank you so much for watching, like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you really liked it, and I'll see you in the next one.
Call your dogs! They can feast on your corpses!